audio.
If you can set well, you can climb well, and you can understand the move on a project. That's kind of the best thing we're going to do for your movement, is also getting you setting.
Hey y'all, welcome back to The Struggle. It's me, Ryan, your chief struggling officer over here. And oh, am I struggling, you guys? But I love it. I'm struggling and I'm psyched. I'm equal parts struggle and psyched right now. I'm actually probably more parts psyched because I'm about to shift into a high gear on this struggle bus to V8. And that is what this episode is all about. Let's frickin' go. I am so incredibly psyched and grateful to announce that I am going to be working with the fine team over at Kilter. You all know Kilter, whether you are a kid or whether you are new to climbing or you are a V15 boulderer, from Alex Magos to me and a whole lot of people in between. Kilter is providing an incredible training tool, and I am so psyched, you guys, because I'm getting one in my basement. Why am I doing this? Well, first of all, why not? I mean, I am a grown-up. My wife and I had this conversation recently, and we're like, you know what being a grown-up is? It's like having an idea and then just being able to do that idea if you want to and you can. And I want to and I can. And also, there's no boards in my town. There's no adjustable boards. There's no Kilter board. We got a couple moon boards at the two gyms that I have, but nothing's adjustable. I do like the moon board, but I knew that I was going to need something that was a little bit more flexible for me to suit my goals as a route climber as well as a boulderer. I had a conversation with Eric Hurst on this show, and he said, look, the Kilter board, if you can have access to one, the Kilter is going to be the absolute best training tool for you. And so here we are. I'm doing it. And I know I am incredibly lucky and incredibly privileged to be able to put a board like this in my basement. But you know what? I've worked really hard my whole life, and I'm so psyched on climbing, and I want to get better at it. And after a conversation that I had with Matt Samet earlier on this show, Matt Samet from Climbing Magazine and a hell of a climber himself, he and I did a bonus episode about what are the most impactful things one can do to get better at climbing. And number one on his list, and he's written articles about this, is to have a training board, if you can, in your home. And since I live a couple hours away from the closest climbing, having a Kilter board in my basement is going to absolutely change the way that I progress down this road to V8. Anyway, this episode is not just about me getting a board, but it's about how I'm going to train on it, how training on a board in general. And we talk a lot about the moon board and other boards that are out there, as well as spray walls and any number of other things, how training on that kind of tool can really help a climber to progress, not just in their strength and their fitness, but also with their technique, which is, I know, an area of low-hanging fruit for me. And so to join us for this conversation and walk me and you through all of those things is Jackie Hueftle and Kevin Cuckovich of Kilter. Jackie, as you might know if you know anything about Kilter, is a co-founder of Kilter along with Ian. She's also the co-founder of the Route Setting Institute. She is a hell of a climber and a hell of a route setter. She's been doing it for decades now. And Kevin, who's also been with Kilter for many years and helped to design a lot of their boards and the climbs on their boards, is a fantastic boulderer. He's a strength and conditioning coach. And so he's going to be stepping in and coaching me, co-piloting this struggle bus with me going forward, along with the rest of our crew, Nate Drolet and Eric Hurst. And I've already been working with Kevin for a couple of months on some strength and conditioning, and I've never felt stronger or just more bulletproof in my body than I do right now from doing a lot of this off-the-wall training that Kevin has me going through. We're going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about how I can use my Kilter home wall and how you out there can take advantage of the Kilter board at your gym or a moon board or whatever else that you have around to train to get the most out of your training time so that we can then apply it to rock if that's what you are psyched on, which I am. Okay, let's continue our road to V8 with Jackie Hueftle and Kevin Cuckovich. How you doing?
All right.
Plugging along out here in Colorado.
Yep.
Oh, I know you've been busy. Of course, we've been in touch for many months now as we've been talking through the partnership and the board that's coming my way that I'm like insanely psyched for. It's like Christmas Eve over here in Kentucky. But I know you guys have been like stacked over there. So hopefully you found some time to sneak away and get some climbing in for yourselves amidst all the work.
Once a week, hiking 10 miles for one boulder. The dog loves it, but it's, yeah.
I'm not doing that. I've been board climbing because I work a bunch, so just climb in the evening.
And I don't.
Kevin works
Yeah.
on lunch too, but Kevin has better time management skills than I do. So
This is why I'm so psyched to have a board in the basement, is the approach. It cannot be beaten.
Oh my God, so nice. When it's in your space, it's just a very nice feeling.
Oh,
Sit
man.
there, drink coffee, looking at it. It's a good time.
Ooh, I'm so beyond psyched. I guess before we jump into all of that, because I've got a whole load of things I want to talk with you guys about on my road to V8 and how Kilter will help me to hopefully accelerate my progress along this so far slow going road to V8. But before we kind of jump into all of that stuff, I'd love to just do like a quick little background on the two of you. And so, Jackie, I'll kick it over to you. Maybe just give us a quick intro and a little bit about your background as a climber and a quite accomplished setter, as well as your relationship here and your history with Kilter.
okay, yeah. So I started climbing in like 1998 in Nevada, Reno, kind of Tahoe area, which means scary granite slabs. I also started route setting pretty quickly. I used to compete. I was on the youth world team for the USA, and then moved up to Colorado. Met Kevin like the first week we both lived here. We've been friends ever since.
Nice.
And then set at the spot for a long time. Set a bunch of comps. Love route setting. But in 2013-ish, Ian Powell, who I had known since about 2005, he'd been back at the gym for a couple of years, and he started shaping holds again. And the hold market was real stagnant. And so as the head setter of the gym, I was excited to have some new holds. I was actually doing hold reviews at the time too, so I was pretty aware of what was on the market. And there was some good stuff, but it wasn't a ton. And Ian just revitalized to me like the whole industry for climbing holds. He was super active and like sharing information with people, encouraging people, talking to people publicly and privately, and doing a lot of podcasts, and we did videos, and he talked a lot about holds. And at the same time, like some other companies started doing some bigger stuff as well. So the whole hold market got really exciting. And so I started helping him with Kilter really quickly, and then eventually transitioned out of route setting into Kilter full time. And a few years into that, we, with an old friend of mine, started working on the board project. And we then did the original Kilter board, which everybody's familiar with, I think, or hopefully you are. And then we started we had a hardboard project. And then when the pandemic happened, we actually pivoted and spent 6 months converting some of the hardboard holds with some more, manageable holds into what we had turned into the home wall, which is what we are sending you, the full ride. So yeah, and then we spent like 6 months testing holds and testing layouts for that, and released that, and then released the bigger sizes of it. And that's what we have here at home. We have a few walls out in the barn that we use for testing, and we have a home wall full ride that I use myself most of the time. And since Kevin's been here, he and I made it steeper, and we've been climbing on that quite a bit in preparation for this project with you.
God, we could just do an entire podcast just on the things that you just covered in about 60 seconds there. And so maybe we'll have an opportunity to do that, because I'm really fascinated with the evolution of climbing holds and Kilter just being on the forefront of all of that. But we'll save probably a lot of that conversation for another time, although I will loop back with you about the boards and the holds on the boards, the shapes of those, and what separates the different lines and boards that you all offer. So we'll come back to that in just a second. But congratulations on your career and the accomplishments that you've had at Kilter. It's rare to be able to go to any high quality gym or scroll through Instagram for more than a few seconds and not see somebody pulling some rad moves on a Kilter board. So the impact on the sport has been absolutely massive. And I cannot wait to train with you all in Kilter as well. So much to unpack there, but let me swing over to you, Kevin. So you and Jackie go way back. Love that. Tell us a little bit about yourself as a climber, and also, your role in training and in your role within Kilter. And then we'll dive into the road to V8 here.
So been climbing since the early 2000s. I started in Davis, California, the home of Beth Rodden and Keenan Takahashi. Then, shortly then moved to Colorado, where, I met Jackie like week 2 in being a boulder. Immediately became friends, kept just kind of climbing, dropped in and out of school to do random climbing trips back and forth for, a really long time. Spent a lot of time on the road, and then came back to Boulder early 2011s. And my friend, who is now a carpenter here, or general contractor, Theo Marin, got me into training and kind of taught me about the principles behind it, the ideas, gave me a lot of literature, and that just kind of took me from there, kept going and going. And then Jackie and Kilter were really influential in kind of encouraging me to make it a thing I did. And with their help, I got my CSCS last year, and now I'm doing this.
I want to say too, Kevin was a really big part of developing all the Kilter boards. So he's, helped us with layout, with boulders, with testing, just the entire time. And then the other thing I want to say is the reason we encouraged Kevin to do the training is because Kevin and I lived together for a long time. And the only reason I ever got strong at rock climbing was because Kevin was dragging me through training programs when we lived together. And so my best climbing that I've ever done, basically, I was climbing a ton, I was going out a lot, but one of the key things for me was the working out with Kev. So I really believe in his ability to take even a reticent pupil like myself and force me to become as strong as I actually wanted to be. So
there's also the insane amount of baked goods I provided as well.
He does provide the baked goods. So it's
Oh, I didn't know this was part of the equation, Kevin. This is getting better and better, by the way, because it's already a sweet partnership. But my soft spot, or perhaps my strong spot, is my love of pastries. So okay, well we'll have an offline discussion about that. But I am fresh sitting here right now. I just came from the gym where I did a hypertrophy workout that Kevin, you've been putting me through, and I've just been getting wrecked on these workouts. But then I feel so good afterwards, and the next day I'm just already feeling stronger and more resilient. We'll talk more about what you're focusing on with me after seeing some of the videos that I've sent your way and understanding a little bit more about my fitness and my climbing and all of that. But I've really been enjoying the workouts that we've been going through. So we're already diving in. The board hasn't arrived, but we've already been diving in, and so we'll bring the audience up to speed here on that in just a second. But Jackie, I do want to swing back with you. You give me a great little segue there to talk about the Kilter boards and the layout. You said Kevin has been instrumental in helping to design those boards and the layouts. And so maybe before we talk specifically about me, if we can just kind of look at the landscape of climbing boards, system boards that are out there, and maybe the main ones or the most common ones that we would come across being Kilter, Moon, Tension. There's some others out there, Decoy and Woods, and some others. You probably are more aware of all of them than I am. But can you give us, just as the audience and me as well, as this is a relatively new world for me, just a sense for where Kilter fits into that equation?
Yeah, so we, like I said, in 2017, so in 2016, Ben Moon visited us. And so the only board on the market was the Moon board. And I was actually lucky enough to climb at the school in England in 2003 or something. I didn't know what it was at the time. I was 19. And this climber, a friend of mine, knew this guy from Sheffield named Ben Pritchard, who's a legend in England, actually, but who knew? And Ben took me climbing in England every day and let me stay at his house, and was just amazing human. And he took me to school one day. So I got to climb with Ben Moon and also with Jerry Moffat a couple different days. And the school was I'd never heard of it. So I didn't know how cool it was that I was getting to go there. But it was really cool. And I still have, a really vivid memory of, Jerry Moffat telling me to suck it up because I was trying to pull. They had 20-degree wall with these terrible, just wood pinches that you had to roll to your fingernail to even grab them. And I was like, there's no way. And he was just you can do that, embarrassing me into doing it, which I did. So, I've never forgotten a few things about that experience. And we've stayed friendly with Ben. And obviously the Moon board is, it's one of those things that in climbing, you always are oh, somebody should make a light up board. Somebody should make an app control, later on an app controlled board, but somebody should. And we were well, we're too busy with colds. We're not going to do it. And Ben visited us after a trade show, and we talked about potentially having Ian, because my partner, Ian Powell, is I think he's the best hold shaper in the world. He's just super talented. He can make basically anything. He's also a fine art sculptor. He's also a very dynamic personality, and I'm sure you can read about him if you haven't. And he's done quite a lot in climbing when he's been involved in it, which has been since the 80s. But there have been spurts where he's come in and, helped discover the polyurethane that's still to this day one of the most popular materials for climbing holds, was from Ian finding manufacturers in Colorado and happening to meet a guy who is a world expert in polyurethanes and finding a way to make that into a good climbing hold material. And that was in the 90s. Anyway, so Ben Moon visited us, and we talked with him about Ian maybe shaping new moonboard holds, because it was kind of okay, the moonboard was born out of this schoolroom and this idea of this is what's hard for us. It wasn't necessarily designed for like gym users all over the world, but that's what it had kind of become because it was the only thing in category. It's a great concept. And so the discussion was, what eventually became the new Moon, like I think it's 2019 or the newer holds, but we didn't make them. We are still friendly with Ben, but it was just like, okay, this isn't a good project for us. And then a year or so later, or even actually as early as 2016, but we didn't really jump on it right away. An old friend of mine had reached out about potentially us making a board because he wanted to make, lights for a board, or he wanted to do an app, I think. And we were like, no, we don't want to do it. We're too busy. And then finally like, okay, if we do it, we want to do it our way. So we worked with our factory to get holds to look the way we want them to look. We developed the light system that we use. We collaborated on a lot of the app features. Ian started shaping holds. We had our factory manufacturing the clear base, like the light up perimeter that we're known for, because to us that made the most sense. We want it to look good. We want it to be, obviously Ian shaped all the holds. They're comfortable, they're ergonomic, they're super functional, and then we want them to look a certain way so you can see them from anywhere that you are on the board. They really stand out. It's very intuitive. So we put a lot of time into that, and we put a ton of time into just testing holds and layouts. So we built an adjustable frame. We climbed, we changed holds, we climbed, we changed holds. Ian shaped new holds. And after about a year, almost exactly, of testing it and moving stuff around, we got to what we considered the final layout, and we started sending them out. And that was the original Kilter board. And we started selling those all over the place. And then, like I said, we were working on a hard board with smaller holds, and that got converted into the more mid-level home wall. And kind of the point of the Kilter board was not to compete directly with the Moon board. It was more to complement the Moon board. The Moon board is known for being crimpy, super power, like really small kind of holds that are maybe not super comfortable, but that's okay. And we wanted to make a product that with an adjustable frame, adjustable angle, more comfortable holds on the whole, was set for a wide variety of climbing abilities and uses. So like paraclimbers can climb on it, kids can climb on it, newer climbers can climb on it. And the lights are, especially for newer climbers and kids, are great because they can see what to do. But also experienced climbers can have a great time on it. So we put small footholds on it to make sure that you had to work on tension. We introduced the foothold only light designation to make it easier to like create more specific problems, because outdoors a lot of times you will have a big foot that you really aren't going to grab. But indoors, if you put it on as a handhold, people might grab it even if they shouldn't. So the foot only helps us direct traffic a little bit better and helps create an experience that's a little better and a little more curated for the user. And then that plus 15 angles of an adjustable angle Kilter board. And now you can serve Jimmy Webb and Alex Magos, and you can serve the paraclimbing team, and you can serve, kids camp, and you can serve people that are climbing the gym a couple times a week and are climbing like V3, V4 happily. So yeah, we were really trying to like make a good product for climbing gyms that provided a lot of value for the users of climbing gyms, and also was good for, more specific and stronger climbers. So during the pandemic, Jimmy Webb built one at his house, and he said it kept him sane. And that was it's funny, he logged everything at 50, but his was actually at 52. So he did it a little bit harder than everybody else.
Always.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate the overview there, because for me, you touched on essentially the three main things that I feel like kind of set the experience with Kilter that I've had, apart from predominantly what I climb on in terms of system boards. The only board that's at a gym here in Louisville is a Moon board. It was 2016, and then a couple of years ago they switched it to 2019. So I spent some time on that. I've spent time on Kilter OG. Alex Honnold has one. Spent a lot of time climbing on that when it was too hot in Vegas, or we would just do some sessions when I was out there. He's got a great setup there. And then at gyms around here, the OG, not around here, but like a little bit further out, there's gyms that have the OG setup. And then there's the home wall at kind of a private location out at the Red River Gorge, where I had an opportunity to climb with Alex Magos that for a video that will be coming out later. And of course that you all saw. So Kevin, that was part of you assessing where I was at with my climbing, was seeing some footage of me on that board with Alex. But anyway, what really stands out, having spent most of my time on a Moon board, is just how the user experience is just much friendlier, to be perfectly honest, on a Kilter. I just today I was sessioning on the Moon board, and I like the Moon board. It's really, really hard. It's very humbling, and it probably hits me in some soft spots, which can be good. But also, I find it very tough to have it fixed at 40 degrees, and really hard for my brain, for whatever friggin' reason, to have the lights where they are below the hold. It's like right between the two rows of holds. And I just, as long as I've been climbing on it, I'm constantly grabbing or putting my foot, especially on the wrong hold. And then my buddies in the back are like, one up from there. And, they're correcting me, or I'm like cruxing to just top the thing out and I can't see where the light is because it's like directly below a hold. So, the full light up holds that you guys have is very friendly for users. And then the adjustability is crazy. Were you all the first adjustable board? I mean, to make something adjustable like that is pretty revolutionary. For me to have a project at 40 degrees that I can't do, but work it at 35 or 30 is like such a cool experience. And then for me to have my kids hop on at 20 and climb something that they can do, but then I can just kick it back to 40, it really opens it up. It just makes it so much more, not only accessible, but also sometimes you're working on projects that are at 15 degrees or 20 degrees outside, and you don't necessarily want to train at 40 degrees because you want to train something that's a little bit closer to the angle of the thing outside. So those are the things that really, I guess, stand out most for me. And Eric Hurst, Eric has been a friend and a coach of mine for many years now. And when I was talking with him about this road to V8, which we can shift into now and talk about how the Kilter home wall will fit into that equation, he immediately said, Kilter's the board for you. If you can figure out a way to train more on a Kilter, that's going to not only help you to achieve your goals, but also, in his estimation, would apply very well to the Red River Gorge because of the holds, the shape of the holds, and what we experience at the Reds, which are fairly friendly, little mini buckets or drags or pinches that are, it's not as crimpy. There are some crimpy routes, of course, out here at the Red, but a lot of them are pretty positive, pretty friendly holds, but steep, and you have to make big moves between them. And so that's, he was like, look, if you can spend time on a Kilter. And so here we are. I'm about to spend some time on a Kilter, which I'm so psyched about. And Kevin, I'll kick it back over to you here because you have seen some of my climbing, both on the Kilter home wall as well as some moonboard videos I've sent you. I've sent you videos of me doing weight training. And so I'm curious, without me leading the witness at all, please feel free to be brutally honest, but the goal is the road to V8 here. So where do you think I'm at as your pupil?
I think you're not necessarily as far as you think you might be, but we kind of got to get rid of some of your route climber habits when it comes to cruxes and kind of like keeping stuff in reserve. You're either all tense or not tense. And like all tension or no tension, all drag or all crimp, like getting everything kind of working when it needs to work at a high level, but then being able to drop it down, keep tension, but not overdo it, not lock yourself up with being so tense or locking your arms and shoulders and not being able to pull. I think we have some mentality to get through first, which we're going to see with the assessment. Have you on a whole battery of different climbs and different situations. And then we'll see what happens when you hit a certain type of crux. And that'll kind of inform us what we're going to do for your problem progression and specifically your weight training. In addition to that, because your body is strong. It's definitely not your weak point. You have really good shoulders. You have really good stability in your back. You can keep everything down at the end of a set, which is really, really good. Like most people, especially climbers, at rep 6, 7, 8 of a pull-up start to round over. The mid and low traps just become tired and they get that hunch, and then they're just pulling with their arms and the lats just are fading away. But you don't have that issue. We've got a chance to really up your power without having to up your strength too much as well.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the vote of confidence, which I often lack confidence in myself. And there is a mentality thing with me specifically about bouldering because I've got such a route climber's mindset. And now I'm like, want to become a boulderer. And so it's such an interesting journey through this like spectrum of try hard, where now it's like, okay, how can I really try 100% on a few moves and really engage everything at once and work on this tension and not sag and relax? So there are some mentality things there. And I've had conversations with Nate Drolet about that over the past year as well. And it's been something that I've been trying to work on. The hardest boulder that I've done outdoors is a V4. Now, I haven't spent a lot of time bouldering outside. Well, I don't know. Let me scratch that. I think there's a boulder in the middle of the 13A project that I did here at the Red that's probably V5. I think it goes V5, maybe V5 plus. So it was a hard boulder in the middle of a route, but the hardest actual kind of standalone boulder that I've topped out were some V4s that I did in Leavenworth and I think a couple at Craft. But I haven't projected any boulders, and so I don't know where I land, to be perfectly honest. This will be my first real focus on bouldering outdoors going over the next year here. I did a couple V7s in a gym, but it's so hard to understand like how that might translate over.
You can't know from gym grades. Every outdoor area is different. Climbs the same grade, the same outdoor area can be different. Certainly gyms are different. That's to go back to the moon board, which again, like we have a ton of respect for what Ben has done. And I definitely want to make sure that comes through. Like we always want to give him credit for what he did and what he continues to do. He has a reputation for the boards being very stout, and that is just the moon scale, right? And then the Kilter, our boards have a bigger variety, so you'll find hard problems and soft problems in any given grade range. And we're working on verified climbs, so you'll have like a circuit that we agree with to kind of base it off of. But basically, a board system is the most international grading system available because you're comparing like to like all over the world, and there's no other way to do that. Like you could go to Font or Yosemite and spend all day trying to do a V1, and then you could go to Font or Yosemite and climb a V6 the same day, or go to Waco and climb a V10. I mean, I'm not trying to say it's easy. It certainly isn't. It's the birthplace of the V grade. So if anything's V10, it should be in Waco. But the size of the holds, the type of moves, what you're doing as a climber, what your strengths are going to contribute to how it feels, what size you are to you, to you, how it feels to you. And you just can't, it's really going to always be a bit subjective. So I think a board is as good of a place as any, and if not better, to kind of have a more universal system to base it off of. And then, Kev can help you pick problems. Like you can try problems and say, hey, I think this is fun, or it seems like a good project for me. Or Kevin could say, hey, I think actually you could do that if you just did this thing differently, or we'll do this shoulder program and then come back to it. So, just whatever your experience is. And if it's some, V4s and some V7s inside and a hard 13 crux, like that's a great place to start from.
Yeah, I'm curious, Kevin, I appreciate that perspective, Jackie. Thank you. And so true on the grades. I mean, honestly, the road to V8, quote unquote, is so flawed just from the start because I haven't picked a project. As soon as I pick a project, it'll be the road to that project, right? And that's what happened to me on the road to 13A was I went into it saying, I want to try to push to the next grade. Then it took me a while, but I landed on the force. And then really it was the road to the force because I got psyched. And it wasn't really about the grade as much as it was this very unique and wonderful climb that I fell in love with. And so hopefully sooner than later, I'm able to find whatever that outdoor project is, and maybe we can start to get even more specific with our training. But prior to that, I think, Kevin, you've probably identified plenty of general areas of opportunity for us to work on, and then this assessment will likely yield more. So if we're able to, because we haven't done the assessment yet, but if we're able to kind of step back and take a look at the next 6 months or 12 months or whatever kind of time period you think is valid to do an overview of, what do you think this training is going to look like? I'm going to have a home wall with 20,000 problems or however many problems are in, when you look at all the angles and the idea here is, and I haven't built it yet, but I'm about to, is to make it adjustable. And the limitations in my basement because of the height of the ceiling will be 35 degrees and higher. So 35 to 70 or whatever is what we're going to be able to make it. And what do you think this journey is going to look like?
I think first we kind of got to start off just finding out your strengths and weaknesses as a boulderer. Like what types of like small holes you can be good at? Are you going to be good at slopers? Are you going to like pinches more?
Nope. No for both.
Okay, so crimps. So then we know that. Now we know we're going to kind of force you into, getting on pinches more, getting on slopers more, getting your base level at everything kind of try hard. Probably, I think, going to really focus on your targeting at first as well, and then supplemental weights. But I'm a big proponent of thinking of climbing as a skill sport with a strength component. So we're not going to do more than 1/3 of your week is going to be weights. The rest is climbing. And we'll focus mostly there, get you at a basic kind of general strength level, maybe start working into some power, especially if we find, you find a problem that's real snappy, has some jumps. You go to Chattanooga, there's a couple things there that are really snappy that you might like, that, 7s on your way to 8s. We up your power after that. But I think kind of going in blocks of 9-week periodized cycles with a lot of emphasis on general fitness in your climbing, but specific strength exercises will kind of take us from chunk to chunk to chunk. And then we get closer to fall, we'll taper off the weights and just get you going harder on projects. But then also try and keep your shoulders healthy, try and keep your fingers healthy. Core, probably going to force you to do dragon flags at some point. That's always a good time.
Oh, I don't know what those are, but the
It's
way you just said those are going to be a good time makes me think that they're not going to be a good time.
Climbing is subjectively fun. It's rewarding. You're going to feel rewarded, but I just put a friend on an endurance program, and he's been just periodically cursing my name, but he likes it afterwards. So it'll be the same thing.
I spent plenty of time cursing you in person and then thanking you later.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're psyched, you're in for it, and that's always helpful because you're building towards something.
Totally. I mean, it's called the struggle. I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't embrace it. I mean, certain days can be harder than others, but I am really, really psyched. And having this incredible tool in my basement, like I'm just going to walk by it and want to get on it. It may be an issue of where I'm like a little overstoker, and you'll have to peel me back a little bit on it, Kevin.
Yeah.
But speaking of endurance for a second, I do want to touch on that because I'm, a Red River Gorge climber and I'm trying to become a boulderer. But where do you think you'll see my sport climbing fit into the next season? If we're talking about kind of fall through winter is going to be my main goal to really commit and focus on bouldering. And I'm ready and excited to do that. But I also have the red, right down the street. And is there an opportunity to do some pumpy routes, or are we going to be looking at shorter, punchier routes? How do you think that'll fit into the overall plan?
I'm not ruling out some longer routes in your future, but it will kind of depend on what we're seeing. If you're doing really well, your weights are doing good, you're climbing consistently on the board, your rest times are staying kind of in what we want, and then we switch you to some longer stuff and those stay good, we can do longer stuff. But if, we switched you to more like getting out on routes and all of a sudden your power is kind of dropping and your strength isn't as good and you're not as consistent with your boulders throughout a session, then we'll pull it back to like some shorter, more bouldery routes. The body likes to kind of keep with a routine. So if you throw a bunch of high endurance and like slow glycolysis at it and you're doing 100 moves, you're resting a few minutes and you're just basically working in that like glycolysis, slow glycolysis and oxidative system, and then you're going into fast glycolysis, oxygen, your body gets confused. It's harder to make strength adaptations if you're doing a ton of endurance. So
sure,
if we can keep you making those good adaptations that we want for your bouldering and you're still doing routes, we can do that. But if we start to see it impact your goal, then we shift it to be a little less fun for you and a little more work. But this should still be fun. And I'm not going to have you do something that I think you can't do, but I am going to also make sure you stay on task.
This episode's brought to you by Rungni. Y'all know Rungni. It's Magnus Mitbo's company. I love every single thing they make. Let me highlight a few of my favorite products right now. First of all, the harness pants. Oh my gosh, you probably heard me talk about these pants like for the past year. They are durable, they are stretchy, they are feather light, and they look fantastic. And now, oh man, I'm really psyched. They just launched a new version of the harness pants. It's like an offshoot. It's the harness utility pants. More pockets, elastic waistband for the perfect fit, and also improved sizing. So whether you're rubbing up against rock or trekking through the forest, these pants are tough, they're durable, and they are built to withstand whatever you throw at them. And I also want to highlight Magdust Super Dry. This is a new chalk that they just came out with. Super dry formula. If you've got sweaty hands, or if you're like me, you're spending a lot of time in the gym right now, this stuff will keep your hands sticky on rock or plastic. I love all of it. You can use code STRUGGLE and get 10% off pretty much everything over at Rungni. You can get a bundle, which will score you some free shipping. Let's go. Well, I think that's important because I had the goal this spring And it ended up just being, I think, a little bit naive of me to take on to try to become a hard boulderer while also building out a pyramid at the red. And basically what happened is I didn't do either very well. And so that was kind of a hard learning lesson. And I felt pretty disappointed, to be perfectly honest, coming out of the spring. I was like a little bit down on myself as a climber. And so I do think it's important to, I think, is it Dan John that says, keep the goal the goal? You know, like it's important to keep the goal the goal here. And the goal is for me to become a stronger boulderer, whether I achieve V8 or not, this kind of arbitrary goal. Becoming a stronger boulderer will help every individual move on all of my future sport projects feel easier. It'll conserve more energy. I'll need less endurance. And so the high tide will raise all ships, if you will. And so I am really excited about that. And so I'm going to be spending a lot of time on the home wall. And again, I've only spent a bit of time on it because most gyms have the Kilter OG. And so, Jackie, I'd love to just get your impressions on, having spent a lot of time on the home wall yourself, how you feel I and anybody out there who maybe either has a home wall, has access to one, or maybe even would be thinking about putting one in as they follow along with my journey. How does the home wall differ from the Kilters that we've been on at most of the gyms that we've been to? And do you have any insight, any beta for how to essentially best use the home wall to achieve training goals?
I mean, as far as the holds go, the home wall is generally, it's a denser layout. The holds are closer together if you get the full ride. I think we're starting with the main line and going to the full ride. The holds tend to be a little smaller, a little more fingery, and a little harder. And we do that for a few reasons. There are mini jugs on the wall, but like all the Kilter boards, as you make the wall steeper, the holds are designed to feel harder. So if they were all really like a certain type of in cut, they don't change enough when you make the wall steeper, which is something we learned early on. So there's a variety of crimps, pinches, some slopey edges, flat edges, mini jugs. Everything's bolt-on, so some are designed to be, a hand from one direction and a foot from the other kind of thing. And I think with the density, you can create such a variety of movement. A lot of my sessions I set a problem and climb it, set a problem, climb it, set a problem, project it, save it for next session, try other people's boulders they've just set. Sometimes I set variations on those, but it just gives you this ability to try a lot of different moves in a small space. And there's a variety of hold types, and it varies. It complements the original Kilter board quite well, and also varies, in itself. So you have a lot of different types of options in a relatively small space. Like the smallest home wall is 7x10. So you could really fit it into, a fairly small space. And what we're doing with you is a 10x10, which is still short because you don't have the ceiling height, but it is a little wider. So you get a little bit more climbing sideways, which we think is nice.
It's just crazy dense. It's like wild when you compare it to a moon board, for example, where it's, the moon is very kind of spacey. There's not a whole lot of holds on it. There's just a wild amount of holds, which on a 10x10, it does seem like we'll be able to get a whole load of variety of movement in, which I think really interests me because I do feel like I had this session with Emil Abramson out in Portland, and we made some videos around that. And one of the things he said to me, which has really stuck with me, is, he's, hey, after watching you climb, I think you're probably strong enough to climb some V8s right now, certainly V7s, but you need some coaching. You need some help with your movement, your body position, kind of the way that you're using your feet. That's going to be one of the big things to unlock it. And I haven't had access to an in-person coach. And Kevin, you and I, for the most part, won't be in person. I'm going to try and get a trip out to Colorado, and I'm going to try and drag you out here to the Red as well. So maybe we'll have some sessions, but maybe we can cover this over some video sessions. But for the most part, it seems like you'll be taking a look at maybe my weaknesses or my areas of opportunity, and either finding climbs that you think maybe will address some certain movement skills that I need to develop, or maybe create climbs, or like Jackie was just saying, kind of I can create my own climbs, but you're more knowledgeable here. So do you foresee us working together a lot on that movement, or do we wait until we find a project, figure out what my movement needs are on that specific project, and then get specific in terms of my training on the board?
Movement right away, because it's just always going to be valuable to have that quiver of what you're used to going forward as a climber. And especially as someone who's been climbing for a while, like you're going to benefit from not just succeeding constantly, but being challenged and falling and having to move on to something different and try something different and keep that kind of pattern going. But I think also it's really valuable to set. And you learn an understanding of movement from setting that you don't get just climbing other people's boulders. You kind of, some of the best climbers are the best setters. That's why, all those problems that like Jimmy Webb, Max Krimmer, Kim Takahashi have put up on the Kilter board, they just blaze through in a second and they're done. They know exactly where your foot needs to be, your hand needs to be, your hips are going to be. If you can set well, you can climb well, and you can understand the move on a project. And then that's kind of the best thing we're going to do for your movement is also getting you setting, but also going to have you just do so many different boulders.
Yeah, like the problem with route climbing, I love route climbing and I started as a route climber, but it's so much effort every time you go up the route, and you're doing the moves like a relatively limited number of times, which is what you'd be able to do on a boulder, right? Because a boulder's right in front of you and it's 10 moves and you could do any of them from the ground in a lot of cases, or close, So with a tool like the Kilter board, you can try so many different moves and variations on moves so quickly and easily that you're just like multiplying rapidly the number of moves that your body starts to be familiar with, is what Kevin was saying. And if you're familiar with moves, it's easier to do them again. You know what to do. You don't have to put as much effort into it mentally or physically. Or if there's like a thing where we're like, oh, Ryan can't do X, then Kevin can be like, all right, we're doing these things, and we're working on your lats, and we're working on this, and now you can do that move. But it's just a totally different like approach than you've probably taken before. Because again, like if you're just climbing stuff other people said, or just climbing in a gym, that's great. You're doing those moves, and you can do a lot more moves in a gym than you can do just outside, which is why I think gyms have contributed to a huge spike in grade ability just around the world. But also just from bouldering and sport climbing, and yes, your endurance may flag a little bit during this for sport climbing, but it'll come back fast because you know how to rest now. You know the mental game of sport climbing, of saving it and using your power when you need to and trying to relax and all those things. So your bouldering improvement that you're about to make is just going to help your sport climbing, and it's going to come back faster than you think. So a good time to try your sport projects is probably near the end of this project. When you do your boulder project, go spend a few weeks sport climbing, try your projects, and you'd probably be surprised.
Well, we also have tools available to, basically keep your strength up and really ramp your endurance up for a period of time. Like every other sport implements block training. Like we don't. We can do that. And like the Kilter board really helps with that. Weight training helps with that. And understanding a residual between endurance and power and strength and the time limit you have from when you stop one to starting another, like that gives us windows to be very proficient with our work.
I think that if you've been climbing a certain period of time, like you do realize you can get quite strong on slightly bigger holds than your project will have. And it's a much, I don't know if safer is the right word, but it's very possible to train for harder, smaller holds outside on slightly bigger, more comfortable holds inside, because you just can't recreate how bad outdoor holds can be in a gym and have it be reasonable to hold. It just hurts. Like it's just different. So, and you can get really strong fingers climbing, a season in Waco on mostly overhang incuts and then be able to climb little crimpy things too. The idea that you can only get strong fingers by climbing on only the hardest, smallest things all the time, I think is not correct. And I think part of what we're trying to do is find that in between where you can get a really good training experience and also have a longer training experience, have longer climbing days, reduce your chances. I mean, you can get hurt walking down the street, but ideally reduce your chances of, injuring yourself through too much repetition on something that's a little bit too, I don't know. I don't really want to use the tweaky, but
repetitive.
Sure. Yeah. So using smart training, using tools like a hangboard for fingers and then climbing a lot is one way to go that we think is a really great way to try to get to your goals.
Well, I think the most important or the most underrated aspect of training is consistency. And if you go so hard one day that you can't climb your next training day, you're shooting yourself in the foot by just, instead of having a light day 2 days a week, one day that's so hard you just can't function. There's no longevity in that. You're going to burn out. You're going to overtrain in 4 weeks. But if you are measured, you use like relative intensities and you plan things out and you don't just blow yourself out, 6 weeks gets you stronger than 4 nasty weeks.
And it's hard because when you're like 17, you can just do whatever dumb thing and usually get away with it. So it's like a lot of us that learn to climb in our late teens, kind of like formative years of climbing were one experience. And then once you become an adult, you start to have a different experience. And then once you become an adult in your 30s, you have a third experience, which is I want to warm up now and I didn't care before.
Right.
And so this is a lifetime sport. It's a skill sport. And if we can get good habits, then you can extend the amount of time that you can spend doing this sport.
Just to expand on that for a second, as now I'm going to have access to this incredible tool, and it'll be conveniently and maybe dangerously close where I'm just going to want to be on it all the time. I'm in my 40s. I do train quite a bit. I do get out and climb quite a bit. So I'm not going from 0 to 100 here. But have you, in your experience, learned anything from now the many, many hundreds of thousands of climbers who have been on your boards? Is there anything that I should be aware of, or people who are listening where maybe they haven't spent a lot of time on a board and they're getting psyched and they want to really dive into a block on the Kilter, for example, or they're thinking about getting a home wall like I'm getting? Any obvious pitfalls that I should have in mind, or that the listener should have in mind, to whether it's avoid injury or just go down a really weird rabbit hole that, is counterproductive? What have you learned in that side?
Maybe the biggest thing that you can do on the Kilter board is don't stray away from things that aren't your style. And just because it's a lower grade doesn't mean it's going to be easy. There are styles that, maybe having a bad day, take it down a couple notches, climb easier things that look like you don't fit in that box, or you don't like slopers, you don't like pinches. If you're a V6 climber and you hate pinches and there's a V4 pinch problem, do that.
Yeah, change the angle if you can. If you want to try something that's hard for you, also, again, like the grades are largely community sourced on the Kilter board app, which means that if I go in and climb something and I go, I didn't like it, or it was easy for me, I don't know, I climbed V13, this seemed like easy, I guess I'll just give it V2. It might be V5 or V4, say, but V4 climbers won't then probably try it because they think it's V2. And V2 climbers won't try it because it's too hard for them, or they do try it, it's too hard for them. So the climb doesn't get done. Right. So we're working on, like I said, verified climbs to help with that, but definitely learning to assess climbs from looking at them and just trying stuff instead of just sticking only with the grade, especially if it has either a low number of votes for the grade, or if it has like a ton of votes at an easy grade. It's definitely worth, being able to independently assess those climbs and not get your feelings hurt if you're like, oh, 30 people or 100 people called this V2, but it feels harder to me. Please give it what you think it is. If you think it's 3+ or V4, because a lot of people, there's a confirmation bias right now in the way the app works, and we're working on amending that. But yeah, if you're forced to give it a grade and you're warming up and you want to log it, then you give it the grade it has, because a lot of people don't take the time to reassess, or they don't feel comfortable saying, wow, I thought that was V4, even though all these people seem to think it was V2. Totally. I've been a commercial setter for a long time, so I'm totally comfortable being like, that is not a V2 hold, or those are not V2 moves or whatever. But I think a lot of people don't either feel qualified or don't want to, or they're confused because their gym is very hard in the way it grades, or who knows. We're trying to make the scale. The goal is to have a useful progressive scale that people can use. So I guess, yeah. So one piece of advice is don't get too sucked into the grades. The app says they're just a guideline to help you figure out what you should try. And you'll learn to kind of independently assess, like, hey, it looks like I can do that. This says V8, but I think I could do it. I'm going to try it. And then of course, again, you can get hurt doing anything. So it's just exercising good judgment. Just because you're climbing inside in a gym or on a board, it doesn't mean that you're free of the laws of physics and gravity. It doesn't mean that you can do the same move that's a little weird for you 30 times in an hour and have that be a good idea. It's just not a good idea. It never is a good idea. So just using common sense, I think.
Yeah. Just listen to your body. It's a thing that we've all been told that we never do until we have to. But if you're tired, you're tired. You don't have to climb every single day to get stronger. Like you get stronger resting.
I should say too, like when you first get a board, like you need to take some time to learn the board, the holds and the moves and the style. So you're maybe not going to climb your normal grades right at first, and that's okay. You need to get used to the holds, get used to the angle, figure out how the board works. Patchy, the famous Spanish climber, he got a Kilter board home wall a couple of years ago. And he set it at a pretty low angle, and he climbed on it for, a month or something. He did a ton of climbs, and then he made it steeper, and he climbed a bunch more climbs, and then he made it steeper. So he just learned the board and then cranked it up. And I think that was, he's a super smart trainer, and I think that was probably the best advice really anybody can get is that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you learn as you go on the board, and it's important to figure stuff out. Like I learned, I'm a larger climber. I love big moves. I do them fairly well. I recently realized great at big moves, suck at swings. So take your time, figure stuff out, be open to why you might be bad at something. And then not just that you're weak. It's no, there's another aspect to maybe why you can't do a certain move. Maybe it's because like you ball up. Maybe it's because you don't, you get too high on the sloper, so you like come off something. But, the answer is not always I'm weak, I can't do it. Sometimes it is.
You're not rolling over the foot. You're not engaging the foot. You're not pointing your knee. You're not moving your hip. Your thumb is in the wrong place. There's all kinds of things. And the other thing I want to say about boards, or at least our boards that I've experienced, is that there are periods of time where you feel like, oh, this is easy, or this is going really well, or I can climb anything. And then you will just hit a wall. It still happens to me on board sessions. I'll be like, oh, this is going well. I'm climbing pretty well. I'm doing a few boulders that like are harder for what I'm climbing right now. Oh, I feel pretty good. I feel like I could do whatever. And then like just all of a sudden I can't do anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we're like asking a certain type of tension from our body that's very hard to like feel it getting tired until it's just gone. And so you go from like Kevin and I set a boulder years ago called Suddenly a Potato, because we had just hit that point, and we like actually had trouble grading it because we were like, yeah, we were totally fine, and now neither of us can do this. And it's like, or we could do it, but it was barely, and it was just like, you hit patat stage, as we say in French. Suddenly you are patat.
I don't need patat.
Yeah, we need a French person to say it. But yeah. So just don't feel bad and think that you suck or be like, what's going on? Like, it's fine. This is part of the board thing, is you just, in that the period of time before you become a potato will get longer.
Yeah. I think a fun thing with climbing is you don't have to get stronger to do a move sometimes. You just have to be better. And you can work on skill infinitely. Like, genetically, we all tap out at our own individual strength level. Like, you're not going to get past a certain level of recruitment, density in your muscle, but you can learn movement better. You can learn how to use your hips better, learn how to put your weight into your shoulder, learn how to, tip into the wall, get over your foot, all these fun things that make a climb possible without you getting stronger 4 weeks from now, to do the boulder. Be a better climber, which you can see in a lot of the best, like Jimmy Webb, Keenan Takahashi, like Alex Magos.
Older climbers, like even Eric Horse is climbing about as hard as he ever has, I think. And, like he's, and Rob Ersfield and Boulder, or even, Lynn Hill, like seen legends like that have been climbing hard for a long time, and they're climbing some of the hardest stuff that they've climbed still.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's no way they're as springy and strong in a certain way as they were when they were 20, but they're just so much better.
Yeah. I've seen,
and still strong,
I've seen big climbers take so much weight off their feet that they hold things that like little climbers can't, because they can just put so much tension into a foot, and like in such a way that, that's kind of already freakish. But
you got to use the skills you got.
Yeah. Yeah. But
I'm really excited about that. Like I mean, mastery is why I love this sport and why so many love this sport. If we were just into the strength aspect, we would just try to be putting up hangboard numbers week after week, or we would be power lifters or, grip competitors. But we do the sport because we love the movement, we love the variety, we love the head game, and mastery is what comes with that. And yeah, that's a great point. I mean, Eric Hurst, when he was 59 or 60, climbed his hardest sport route outside in a 13C at the Red. And I mean, the guy's pretty fit. If you see the pictures of him, the fitness is not an issue. But yeah, that skill, that mastery is so cool to see. Bill Ramsey just climbed 14A at 63, 64 or something. There's just...
Pete Tong climbed like 14C in mid 60s, I'm pretty sure, rifle.
Yeah. I like two of my like kind of climbing idols, like in Yosemite, just keep getting better and better every year. Justin Alicon and Randy Perot, and they just keep doing stuff. And Justin's an old man now.
Oh, he's not. He's like, isn't he like 43? Like me?
No, but if he listens to this, I want him to hear that.
Oh, Justin's not.
And they're just like, they just get better every year. And it's amazing to see like these technical like boulders getting put up by them, and these also extremely difficult like physical climbs, but they are just such good climbers that their skill is just always getting better.
Oh man, I'm really, really hyped about that. And then especially once I identify some outdoor boulders, and it's not like it's very unlikely that I'm just going to like find the V8 and start projecting it. We'll work on a pyramid or a ladder of outdoor boulders as we come into season this fall and into the winter. But then the hype there just goes through the roof because that movement over rock and being comfortable standing on the feet. And, you mentioned bigger climbers being able to hold things that smaller climbers weren't. I just recently had a conversation about this with Dr. Tyler Nelson, and I think he was citing a study that maybe Lattice had done about how elite level climbers actually put less force through handholds than intermediate or even advanced climbers. They essentially are so good about their technique and their positioning that while they're strong, much stronger, and could muscle the hold, they don't. They know exactly the minimal amount of force that is required to put through a hold before they move on to the next hold. And I can feel in myself that I am much better now at grabbing holds in a way that use or require less overall strength or force than I was a couple of years ago. But I'm also acutely aware that I have a lot of area for improvement along that, especially when I climb in session with friends who are much more advanced than myself. I can just see how they're able to kind of settle into these positions where I'm just trying to like muscle my way through them. And I'm really excited to work on that. And what I love about a standardized board and what I'm excited about with having a home wall is that we can identify some of these projects that maybe I can only do one move or link barely two moves, but over the course of the next 6 months or 8 months, as I unlock better skill and likely improve in various deficiencies in strength with training with you, Kevin, I'll be able to see that progress. And I can't get out to outdoor boulders very often. So my primary measure of progress will be on my home wall. And then hopefully we'll be able to find ways to then apply all of that to an outdoor project.
Project shopping is going to be a very fun time. It's a great thing to find something you're psyched on. It'd be awesome, if you find something for your first 6, 7, 8 that you are just like, you can't stop thinking about. That'll also probably make climbing it a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm really hyped. Well, I'll be excited to get input from both of y'all on some outdoor projects that you think will be fun and well suited for me as I enter this journey. As it's probably clear to the audience, this is a partnership that we're entering into here with Kilter. So you're going to be hearing a lot about my journey and my training. I'm starting a board account. So everything that I'm working on, I'll be able to put up there and we can climb the same projects. If you've got a home wall or you train on one, I'd love to hear from you. And this is a big swing that you all are taking on me here. So thank you for helping me to progress on my road to V8 and hopefully well beyond. And we're going to make some really fun content along the way. I'm sure there's going to be no shortage of struggle, but it's going to be just like the full experience. And I cannot wait. So yeah, thank you for supporting me on this.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. We're excited to see how this goes. And, you have a lot of potential and it's going to be exciting to see you work through that with Kevin here and try to help you reach your goals.
Hell yeah. Everybody who's listening, grab yourself a Kilter board. Let's session together.
If people get one like during the courses, they can set boulders for you that you can climb.
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody vote them up. Set me some V5s, but vote them V8s and let's get there earlier.
No, I did the quick math earlier. If you have a 10 by 10 main line, right now, the boulders go up every day, basically. Right now, there's 44 climbs on it, and you have 8 angles you could have, so that's 41,152 climbs possibilities. And if you have the full, when you get it full ride 10 by 10, right now there's 12,241 climbs, so times your 8 angles, 35 to 70, that's 97,928 options.
Oh, God.
And that's just like today.
I've got my work cut out for me. 90,000 climbs to do on my road to, well, I'm sure some of those are much harder than V8, but hell yeah. And then once I start setting, that number is going to go up. So, we better get to work, Kevin. All right, y'all, that wraps up this conversation with Jackie and Kevin from Kilter. Oh, my, the psych is so high. The board arrives this weekend, and hopefully we can get it built without doing too much damage to my storage room. I will report on that. Keep an eye on Instagram, and I'm going to be putting together some YouTube videos as well, Jackie and Kevin and the whole team at Kilter, thank you for believing in me and helping me out on this road to V8. Maybe you don't believe me. Maybe you're like, oh, this guy is going to be struggling for a long time. We need to throw him a bone. It's belief or it's pity, and either way, I accept it. And by the way, you, my dear, sweet struggle listener, if you're psyched on Kilter and you want to join me on this journey and you want to pull the trigger like I am and put one of these gorgeous boards in your very own house, Kilter's actually going to be hooking up struggle listeners. You can use code STRUGGLE at checkout over there. And when you put that board together and you use that code, you're going to get a custom gift pack along with that Kilter board, as well as free shipping and handling. So depending on the layout that you get and the board that you get, that's like $1,000 of value that it could be worth by using code STRUGGLE. And then let's get to work. Whether you are training at a gym or in your basement, whether you've just taken some scrap pieces of wood and screwed them into the underside of a staircase, whatever it is, I hope you're trying hard. I hope you're having a lot of fun, and I cannot wait to continue this journey with you. Huge thanks and appreciation to our show sponsors who have brought you this episode at zero cost. Check your show notes for the links and special discounts to those brands that are only available to Struggle listeners. And by the way, you can see all of the show's awesome sponsors and special deals by just popping over to thestruggleclimbing.com/deals. Hey, did you know that The Struggle's carbon neutral in partnership with the Hueftle Foundation? They are just doing amazing work to bring clean energy to communities around the world. You can get inspired by their latest grant recipients over at hueftlefoundation.org, and then just toss them some love if you can, even a few bucks a month. They're doing such cool and impactful work. And lastly, The Struggle is a proud member of the Plugtone Audio Collective, a diverse group of the best, most impactful podcasts in the outdoor industry. This show was produced and hosted by me, Ryan Devlin, and edited by Glenn Walker. All right, that clips the anchors on this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked it, and if you like this show just in general, would you consider sharing it with your climbing friends? The more who listen, the closer that I will get to making this my full-time gig, which would be so cool. So thank you in advance for sharing this episode and also rating and reviewing it if you got a hot second. Really appreciate you. I hope your training and your climbing are going great. And if you're struggling like me, well, at least the struggle makes us stronger. I'll see you soon.